There is no Archimedean point from which those living through a mass psychosis can observe their collective madness.
And that's why President Trump has apparently thrown Mike Pence under the bus.
It was a renaissance of what I imagine it to be like when there was debate here going on with our founding fathers. That was the kind of debate that was going on.
They were literally calling poor Mike Pence's name. He didn't do anything. They were furious with him.
It is also an example of how Trump does business. Little of the money at stake is his own.
Now, that's not a defense of anyone's behavior, much less a defense of rioting, which, unlike the other channels, we do not support and will never support. It's not even an ideological point. It's just true. That's what happened.
When it is understood that a flood of negative emotions, in conjunction with a weak and insecure sense of self, can trigger a descent into madness, it becomes clear how a mass psychosis can occur.
Spearheading opposition to government-run health care and help Republicans take back the Congress in 2010.
A population first needs to be induced into a state of intense fear or anxiety by threats real, imagined, or fabricated. And once in a state of panic, the door is open for either the positive or negative reaction to unfold.
But much has changed since then.
If a society is composed of self-reliant, resilient, and inwardly strong individuals, a positive reaction can take place. A descent into the delusions of a mass psychosis becomes a real possibility.
But at this point, the truth doesn't matter. What matters is who gets to write the history of what happened.
And they said, go fight. Go fight, because everything's on the line. That's what they said. And when people fought, they came to fight, and then they fought Capitol Police, and now people are dead.
It was despicable. Go to jail for a long, long time.
Idiots that were out there.
That Mike Pence could somehow derail Joe Biden's win and install President Trump. And that's why President Trump has apparently thrown Mike Pence under the bus.
It is only if we accept the existence of a latent paranoid potential lurking in the recesses of the normal mind.
And that's why President Trump has apparently thrown Mike Pence under the bus.
That we can explain the mass delusions which led to the persecution of witches and the Nazi slaughter of Jews.
And that's why President Trump has apparently thrown Mike Pence under the bus.
Vast numbers of ordinary men and women held beliefs about witches and Jews which, if they had been expressed by one or two individuals instead of by whole communities, would have been dismissed as paranoid delusions.
And that's why President Trump has apparently thrown Mike Pence under the bus.
There are extremely primitive, irrational mental forces at work in the minds of all of us, which are usually overlaid and controlled by reason, but which find overt expression in the behavior of those whom we call mentally ill, and which also manifest themselves in the behavior of normal people when under threat or other forms of stress.
They spent all their time saying it was really, really terrible. All of us agree it was a terror attack. Violence is never right. But what they haven't been able to prove is that President Trump's speech on that day was the cause, the legal cause for it, that such that it would constitute incitement. And any standard they put forth for incitement,
that doesn't even begin to tell the story. It doesn't even begin.
They go after people that I guess you'd call them lean toward the right, and they wave American flags. In many cases, they're waving the American flag, and they love our country. It was a zero threat. Right from the start, it was zero threat. Look, they went in. They shouldn't have done it. Some of them went in and they're hugging and kissing the police and the guards. You know, they had great relationships. A lot of the people were waved in, and then they walked in and they walked out.
He said they were hugging and kissing the officers. But listen.
We're watching our own history being written before us right now.
Yeah, and we may expect that we could see that from the president's defense team.
The silence.
Can you tell us anything about that conversation or how they're feeling going into tomorrow?
This was a president of the United States inciting an insurrection, a terrorist attack on Congress.
So we observe 9/11, he says. Going forward, we must observe January 6th. Maybe we'll need a memorial on the Mall.
Well, sure. I grabbed a couple of other senators. I grabbed President Trump. Why don't we go sit down and talk with the president's lawyers and with them? And I just wanted to sit down and say, okay, what are y'all looking to put forward? And there is no coherent basis on the point I just made. He did not praise violence. He didn't encourage violence.
I noticed that wasn't in the videos. That wasn't in the videos that were shown.
They edited out the word peaceful.
But while delusions are false in the sense of not conforming to the facts of the external world, they are considered true to the psychotic and so influence how they interact with the world and with other people.
And my point is simple. Look, neither one of those were incitement.
The ultimate goal here is for them to understand how the process actually works, and the fact that there is one paper ballot for every vote cast in all of the territories and states that we've serviced through election officials, and that the count actually was correct. That's the ultimate goal.
If you can get any of the Trumpers to admit that they were wrong and the election was legit, you would be doing some service to the democracy in light of the facts, because the resistance is hard bitten.
We have a First Amendment that allows robust, vigorous political debate from both sides, even when there is irresponsible or overheated rhetoric on either side. That's part of our political process.
The greatest threat to civilization inability to deal with the forces of our own psyche.
A lot of criticism of you. Fuck them. Okay, well, you know.
Quote, Senator Cruz, you must accept responsibility for how your craven, self-serving actions contributed to the deaths of 4 people yesterday and how you fundraised off this riot. Both you and Senator Hawley must resign. If you do not, the Senate should move for your expulsion. I mean, you've got Joaquin Castro, Beto O'Rourke, Representative Joe Moody, Tellerico, all of these government officials making very similar statements, saying there's blood on their hands, essentially.
That being said, many members of Congress did do that. Many commentators did do that. Many in the media have been doing that for the last few weeks, constantly saying this is our time to fight.
That followed. And where was the outrage from other people who were there, from congressmen who were there? It's outrageous.
Your point of view doesn't matter and will not be heard in the public square from joining these advisory boards.
Forced 2 hours of debate. That was just some time for some opportunistic politicians to get 5 minutes of time on the floor. It was never.
That alone may have cost Trump the election.
For months leading up to the presidential election, we were warned that we should not declare a premature victory. My opponent was told to stay away from the election. Don't campaign. We don't need you. We've got it. This election is done. In fact, they were acting like they already knew what the outcome was going to be.
There is one ruling bloodline that exists on this earth. This ruling bloodline is very old. It is the same bloodline that has always ruled the earth ever since the days of ancient Egypt, and it is very pervasive. For example, many people think that anyone can get to be president of the United States, but the reality is that all US presidents are in fact related, and their lineage can be traced back to European monarchy, and in particular to the line of William of Orange.
The individuals who make up the infected society become morally and spiritually inferior. They sink unconsciously to an inferior intellectual level. They become more unreasonable, irresponsible, emotional, erratic, and unreliable. And worst of all, crimes the individual alone could never stand are freely committed by the group.
They have the power of evidence because they're sworn under oath. These are the things on which you bring indictments.
Group smitten by madness.
And they allege massive cheating, particularly on the part of the Democrat Party of Detroit.
Smitten by madness.
Did you want this closer? I'm sorry. It was a very big surprise to me that our votes are sent out of the United States.
Ballot packages to be sent to different citizens. Whenever you prepare that package, the ballot package is always either 3 days back date, 3 days, not the same day, always days before that date.
That's the first time I've heard that. I'm glad that you just shared that. That's an important piece of our history to understand that.
Now, look, I don't know this guy's wife. Maybe she's great. She could be a great public servant for all I know. But if you look at the larger picture.
It's not a car.
Ah! I'm back! Oh, shit!
Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. Happy Wednesday. On November 22nd, 1963, a man called the President of the United States, passionate and committed communist, murdered Lee Harvey Oswald. There were a lot of questions about what happened, but in 1959, not for a moment. He talked incessantly. Instead, almost immediately, the media began spinning a very different story. And yet many Americans never really understood what Lee Harvey Oswald believed. The explanation was never very precise. President Kennedy had been murdered by conservatives, possibly by conservatism itself. So right-wing Kennedy killed Lee Harvey Oswald. So Lee Harvey Oswald never, as they often put it, in 1959, not for a moment, murdered by conservatives.
It was not a car.
That thing's hot.
Still, Trump owes more than $3 billion, plus interest, to banks and bondholders. And it now appears that he is in for the fight of his life.
And again, I want to just, in leaving, I want to thank our Vice President, Mike Pence, and Karen. I want to thank Congress because we really worked well with Congress, at least certain elements of Congress.
Not the governor, not the Secretary of State.
You were given that responsibility by our founding fathers.
You don't get me.
To agree with the assessment.
These hoaxers, the people that were pushing this out from the very beginning and then lying about it after the fact, they're all at the top echelons of the administration.
That's what is required by the Michigan official manual.
May I please finish?
Remember all the nasty stuff that supposedly happened in Moscow?
May I please finish?
This was not believable to anyone unless you had a sick, demented mind.
It costs no more. New Minute Brew Nescafe.
Today's announcement came as something of a surprise. It had been widely thought the banks would lend Trump enough money to help him get through the summer season.
Yeah, I would say 22nd, third week of September, we were kind of started packing, making the pack.
People, this is a great country. It is my greatest honor and privilege to have been your president.
If he cannot pay, Trump's creditors could take over his properties and sue him for what he still owes.
Say, you are amazing.
Donald Trump disappointed his many creditors today. He announced he could not make scheduled payments of more than $30 million. Trump could choose to protect himself in bankruptcy court.
If he does file in bankruptcy, that automatically stops foreclosure and keeps him in control of the casino and keeps him operating the casino.
I will always fight for you.
But Donald Trump will have a hard time. The yacht alone costs more than $250,000 a month. Just the interest on the ultimate Florida beach house is more than $100,000.
I will be watching, I will be listening, and I will tell you that the future of this country has never been better. I wish the new administration great luck and great success.
And it does not count the cost of the private jet, the helicopter, taxes and maintenance on the 3-story, 50-room New York apartment, or the scores of servants and bodyguards.
I think they'll have great success. They have the foundation to do something really spectacular. And again, we put it in a position like it's never been before, despite the worst plague to hit since I guess you'd say 1917, over 100 years ago. And despite that, the things that we've done have been just incredible, and I couldn't have done it without you. So just a goodbye. We love you. We will be back in some form.
92. Perhaps Trump is proving that the very rich are different from most of us, even when they just have more debts than we do.
Have a good life. We will see you soon. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Very similar to the witnesses that you heard. I find it puzzling that there seems to be such confusion about it. Maybe because of my background as a prosecutor, it's pretty obvious to me what happened here.
It's an urban legend that never happened.
The Democratic leader in Pittsburgh,
in Pennsylvania, in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, or in Philadelphia, or in Detroit, or in Las Vegas,
or in Phoenix,
or in Milwaukee, or in Minneapolis, or in Atlanta,
didn't wake up on election morning, come in when all those, and decide we're going to shut out all the Republican poll watchers.
If you'd like to be one of them, give us a ring.
or as many as we can. I mean, we've been counting absentee ballots forever. I did it myself when I was a young lawyer. Republican sits on one side, Democrat sits on the other side. We don't have any problem with it. This was uniform shutting out of as many Republicans as possible. In Pennsylvania, 890,000 ballots were cast secretly, with no Republican getting a chance to take a look at the ballot.
It's fiction. We made up this one. We made it up. Wrong.
And in Pennsylvania, there are 600,000 more votes counted, mail votes counted, than mail ballots they can find.
Not this time.
This is a swindle.
You're wrong. Not this time.
It's a con job.
This time. Not this time.
It's a theft of an election.
Wrong. Not this time. Not this time. It never happened.
Stormy Daniels.
And you should spend time taking a look at Pennsylvania, look at Philadelphia, look at Pittsburgh, look at how eerily similar it is to what these people testified to. Read the rest of these and see that there are hundreds of people that back them up. That election center in Detroit was a disgrace. You should be ashamed of it as citizens of Michigan. I would be ashamed of it if it was in New York, and it could easily be in New York. And I would do everything in my power to make sure it never happened again. And I would
never certify an election or have my name associated with anything that was false.
The defamation lawsuit filed today in Manhattan states, without any true villain, defendants invented one.
What makes matters worse is that those suffering from a mass psychosis are unaware of what is occurring. For just as an individual gone mad cannot step out of his mind to observe the errors in his ways, so too there is no Archimedean point from which those living through a mass psychosis can observe their collective madness.
I hope you will use the power you have to stop it before it's too late.
The phenomenon we have witnessed in Germany was nothing less than an outbreak of epidemic insanity. No one knew what was happening to him, least of all the Germans, who allowed themselves to be driven to the slaughterhouse by their leading psychopaths, like hypnotized sheep.
I hope you will use the power you have to stop it before it's too late.
Well, there is a case, considering this is the second lawsuit in as many weeks as we've seen, about the same factual predicate, the idea of the disinformation campaign exercising the right to vote.
It takes more than an instant to make a real cup of coffee. That's why Nescafe has come up with a new kind of coffee. It's more than an instant. It's new Minute Brew Nescafe. Anybody can make a coffee more instant, but...
Stormy Daniels.
A new kind of coffee. Minute Brew. Minute Brew. A new way to hold in extra rich flavor. So please help us. Let it brew in the cup a few seconds longer for all that extra flavor to come out.
You're a little cutie pie. Yes, she is. You're a beautiful little potato bug. Super hot. You're a gorgeous mamacita, flower blooming onion, California.
You don't have to sweet talk me. I'm kind of a sure thing.
Bien chingona. Dude.
No.
Hell
Do you?
If you agree it takes more than an instant to make a real cup of coffee.
No.
Hell
Do you?
I'm the king, man. I'm king shit. You're little, you're small, you don't get me.
So please help us. Let it brew in the cup a few seconds longer for all that extra flavor to come out.
It's time!
And to make a real cup of coffee. Buy this completely new kind of coffee today. New Minute Brew Nescafe. It's more than an instant.
What, Hannibal?
Thank you for seeing you again.
Dude, what happened to you? Bro, I needed you.
Trump sent the ominous tweet around 7 p.m. Pacific aimed at Ted Cruz, who he accused of using a semi-nude photo of his wife, Melania, from a previous GQ photo shoot.
You're a little cutie pie. Yes, she is.
That ad actually came from anti-Trump super PAC Make America Awesome in an effort to dissuade Mormon voters from picking the billionaire businessman. The PAC's founder, Liz Mayer, told Vox,
I'm kind of a sure thing.
Bien chingona.
No.
Hell
Do you?
Cruz responded over Twitter to the thread a short time later, referencing wife Heidi Cruz.
There's no coherent way for them to say, but all of our guys who have done it and done it repeatedly.
Slut-shaming Melania Trump.
My point is very simple. The standard the Democrats have put forward, because we don't like Donald Trump, he's guilty. Look, Donald Trump didn't bail out
Melania Trump.
Kamala Harris did. And so if the Democrat standard were to prevail, the next time the Republicans get control of the House, you could anticipate that is a terrible outcome. This is not meant to be politically weaponized.
In the end, the coordinated lying paid off. We're watching our own history being written before us right now. He gave up his American passport and defected to the Soviet Union. There he married a Russian woman and lived in Minsk. 3 years later, he returned to this country and immediately began attending rallies in support of Fidel Castro, the communist leader of Cuba. In the fall of 1963, Oswald traveled to Mexico City and met with KGB agents there. A few months before, in Dallas, he tried to murder General Edwin Walker because Walker had given speeches attacking communism.
Very clearly, they've been lying to people. They've been lying to millions.
So please help us.
We're watching our own history being written before us right now.
All right. I'm out.
So please help us. Let it brew in the cup a few seconds longer. So please help us.
I'm sorry?
Do you have a point of order?
Yes.
What is your point of order?
Point of order is to have them under oath. But you're allowing people to come in here and lie, and I know they're lying.
Representative, you are out of order. I've indulged you, but you're out of order.
'Cause that's all we had planned for the show.
You didn't need me. The power is in you. I never existed this whole time. Go back, watch the tapes.
Life is stupid, do whatever. You could die or live forever. What to do now, we just don't know.
So please help us. Let it brew in the cup a few seconds longer for all that extra flavor to come out.
But you know, there are definitely going to be people who slip through the cracks and are not going to be found in any way, shape, or form. So it's just a matter of fact. But you know what? Whatever fine these people or whatever jail sentence somebody might incur, it doesn't even begin. It doesn't begin.
But at this point, the truth doesn't matter. What matters is who gets to write the history of what happened.
I think you should let me run the country, you run CNN, and if you did it well, your ratings would be much better.
If I may ask one other question, Mr. President, if I may ask one other question, are you worried?
That's enough. That's enough.
Mr. President,
that's enough.
I was going to ask one of the other folks.
That's enough.
Pardon me, ma'am. Mr. President,
that's enough.
Mr. President.
They've been lying to millions. Very clearly, they've been lying to people.